Hello and welcome. This is World News coming to you live from Warsaw on this Sunday morning. I'm Saria Strzemska. And I begin with the latest on Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has said that Russia's increase of deadly strikes on Ukraine shows that Moscow is not thinking about how to end the war. On Saturday, Zelenskyy described the attacks that claimed the lives of at least 25 people since Friday as brutal. The Ukrainian president said Kyiv remains fully committed to constructive talks with the US next week. He has named members of a high-level delegation expected to meet with US negotiators in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. They're aiming to repair ties with US President Donald Trump's administration after a public fallout in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, the Kremlin claims its troops have recaptured 3 more settlements seized by Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region last summer. Realistic proposals are on the table, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said on his social media when announcing that Ukrainian diplomatic and military representatives will hold a meeting with an American team on Tuesday to resume diplomatic discussions. Zelenskyy indicated that he will not participate in the talks himself.
Today, a highly productive meeting took place in Kyiv between diplomatic teams of Ukraine and the UK. We discussed our joint steps that could bring us closer to peace and accelerate diplomatic efforts. I'm grateful for the support. Ukraine is determined to do everything to end this war with a just and lasting peace as soon as possible. Next week, I will begin with a visit to Saudi Arabia. After my meeting on Monday with the Crown Prince, Ukrainian diplomatic and military representatives will stay for a meeting on Tuesday with the American team. The Ukrainian team will include Andriy Yermak, Andriy Sybiha, Rustem Umierov and Pavlo Palisa. On our side, we are fully committed to constructive dialogue and we hope to discuss and agree on the necessary decisions and steps. Ukraine has been seeking peace from the very first second of this war. Realistic proposals are on the table. The key is to move quickly and effectively.
Nordic and Baltic states have pledged to increase support for Ukraine as the US suspends its military aid to Kyiv. The announcement came on Saturday from Danish Defense Minister after a meeting with his counterparts from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland and the Baltic states. Poulsen stated that Denmark would provide additional military equipment to help form new Ukrainian army brigades. The ministers also discussed increasing ammunition supplies to Ukraine. An increase in the number of Polish men to serve in voluntary drills, withdrawal from anti-landmines and cluster ammunition conventions and future plans to acquire nuclear weapons. Warsaw sets the pace for its allies in the wake of the ReArm Europe plan announced in Brussels this week.
What the Prime Minister of Poland said in Parliament on Friday has stirred up a discussion across Europe.
If I were to suggest a return to basic, compulsory service, I would say this. We have several models. One of the valued ones is the Swiss model that is not mandatory, but there are incentives that could make men decide to undergo annual training.
Warsaw's goal is to have 500,000 men, including reserves, who will be ready for war. That's 200,000 more than the previous target and 300,000 more than currently.
Prime Minister Tusk also said that Poland might opt out from 2 conventions. This is the Ottawa Convention and the Dublin Convention that ban the cluster munitions and anti-personnel mines.
There is no point in fooling yourself. The problem is that in our environment, those we may be afraid of, or those who are at war, they all have it.
But that's not all. Poland is also seriously considering France's nuclear umbrella proposal. Warsaw wants nukes.
The whole government, and especially Prime Minister Tusk, explore every possible option how to ensure our security.
On the other side of the border, Belarus, Russia, they do not observe any kind of treaties. So in order to be secure, we need to react properly. So again, better late than never.
Poland has placed a priority on ramping up production of weapons and overcoming bottlenecks that have slowed down production in the past.
For many years, it was a question of money, right? And because if we look at the military spending, the times of increased military spending are quite recent. It's not been always like this, right? So I think first money, But once you secure money, there is a certain delay for ramping up production, right? Because the production capacity was just not there.
The announcements by the Polish Prime Minister have raised some eyebrows abroad, Germany's public broadcaster ARD writes.
What Tusk then says is surprising, even to regular listeners.
Referring to the idea of Poland withdrawing from the Ottawa and Dublin conventions.
The fundamental underlying red thread behind all of this is that the security environment has changed. It changed when Russia invaded Ukraine for the second time in the high-intensity kinetic conflict that's been going on since February of 2022, and it will change in the aftermath of whatever agreement it is made.
Polish politicians seem to agree that when it comes to security, unity is of the essence. Tusk's proposals are likely to receive bipartisan support.
And we continue the same topic. Preparation should begin years or months in advance, not just weeks before an emergency. That's according to Joshua Bergin, NSL program coordinator at the Warsaw Security Forum. He made the remark in an interview with TVP World while discussing Donald Tusk's plan for mass military exercises in Poland.
Well, we certainly understand that environments that are under threat, if there is a civil defense, if there's policies, procedures, plans, understanding of what should happen, that this itself serves as a massive deterrent. Is it merit? Is it warranted? Is it absolutely necessary right now? Probably not. But you don't prepare for a crisis when it's weeks away. You prepare for a crisis when it's years or months away, to where the actions, the behaviors become routine, almost muscle memory. And the notion of a civil defense that's well organized, incredibly articulated, has done drills, exercises. People know who to call within the phone tree, where to report, who to evacuate. This is all stuff that gets done years ahead of time, and it is important. And frankly, I think it's the right thing for Poland. I think it's the right thing for Taiwan right now. I think it's the right thing for the Baltic states. Anybody that's facing a near border threat that doesn't have a civil defense plan, well organized, well executed, well planned out, the expectation that somehow society is going to be resilient in the day of assault is fantasy.
Germany may soon have a new government. The CDU-CSU coalition and the Social Democrats have signed a preliminary cooperation agreement, reaching consensus on key issues, including migration, industry development and the economy.
The first step towards forming a government in Germany has been made. The CDU-CSU parties, victorious in the general elections, are to form a coalition with the Social Democrats. The joint declaration for the coalition was signed on Saturday.
We have a joint paper that forms the basis for the coalition negotiations, which we may start next week. In conclusion, I would like to say a few words about this. We have essentially reached agreement on three major issues. One is the issue of migration, the second is the issue of finance, and the third is the issue of the labor market and the economy.
Prior to talks, the issue of migration was to be the main hurdle to overcome for the future coalition, as CDU-CSU put it at the forefront of their electoral campaign. However, the talks between Christian Democrats and Social Democrats were to be constructive, according to the SPD co-leader.
And I want to say this very clearly for myself here, that if so soon after elections we have reached an agreement with the CDU, CSU and SPD despite very different principles, points of view, opinions and also different characters, if we can manage to agree on such fundamental, important issues of German, national, European and international politics, if we manage to build bridges together, then we can also succeed elsewhere in this country.
Other hallmark projects of the future coalition include overhauling the debt brake and creating a €500 billion infrastructure fund to boost Germany's economy.
On Tuesday, Greenlanders will head to the polls to decide the future of their island, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. The vote comes amid growing tensions over U.S. interest in acquiring the strategically significant land. Sonia Gata-Biszczan reports from Greenland.
This coming Tuesday, Greenlanders will elect members of their parliament. For much of the foreign press here on the ground, a key consideration is whether a potential win of the pro-independence parties would invite increased interest from the United States in the region. However, former finance minister revealed to us that the interests of common Greenlanders go way beyond this one angle.
What I hope from this election is that we appoint politicians that do not focus on receiving the independence paper, but actually politicians that focus on all the things that can lead to that independence, that being education, there is a good welfare, and there is access to health care.
The U.S. President Donald Trump repeatedly shared an interest in Greenland, a self-governing territory of Denmark. In 2019, it was for economic purposes. He called it a large real estate deal. More recently, he said that the U.S. needs Greenland for security purposes. In the north of Greenland, the U.S. has a space base which is used for early missile warning system. Aside from that, Trump is likely interested in this territory due to its rich mineral resources. The locals, however, have limited enthusiasm for Trump's comments.
No. He's thinking just about money.
I don't trust him.
I don't like it. He's a dangerous man.
Greenland is a former colony of Denmark, and in 2009 it obtained self-governing autonomy, which includes the possibility to declare independence from Denmark.
We have a clear procedure for a decision on independence for Greenland, namely a referendum in Greenland, negotiations between the Greenland government and the Danish government. It has to be approved at the Danish parliament as well.
Therefore, the talks of independence, which are now resurfacing ahead of the elections, are not new.
We have to understand that we are still part of the Danish kingdom. That does not mean we do not want independence in the future, but it means that we have the right to determine our future and not our neighbors towards the west.
None of the 5 political parties in the parliament seem interested in the idea of Greenland becoming part of the United States. A recent survey also shows that 85% of Greenlanders also oppose this idea. From Nuuk, for TVP World, Sonja Gatabishchan.
And now on a domestic front, Dariusz Matecki, an MP from the Law and Justice Party, was taken into custody on Saturday. He will remain in pre-trial detention for 2 months on charges of fraud and contract rigging. During the rule of the previous right-wing government, Matecki was responsible for overseeing funds from the Government Justice Fund. He is accused of rigging contracts and misappropriating around €4 million. The Polish parliament approved his arrest earlier this week, leading to his detention by the Internal Security Agency. On Saturday, he was transferred to a prison in Warsaw. Matecki's lawyers have announced plans to challenge the arrest, arguing there is no risk of obstruction or escape. And moving on to the Middle East, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has rejected an American push for talks between Washington and Tehran. Khamenei said on Saturday that negotiations would be aimed at limiting the country's influence in the region and restricting its missile range. Without identifying the U.S., the Iranian Supreme Leader said that he called a bullying government was using negotiations as a means to impose its will on Iran. His remarks came a day after President Donald Trump acknowledged sending a letter to Khamenei seeking a new deal with Tehran. In response, a White House National Security Council spokesman reiterated the U.S. position that Iran could choose to negotiate a deal or it could face U.S. military action. And with this, we conclude our news update. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more World Talks coming up next.